Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Adi, and today you're going to learn everything you need to know about Figma variables. And trust me, they'll change the way you design forever. Figma variables let you store and reuse values like colors, numbers, text, and even Booleans. The best part, update a variable once and every linked design element updates instantly. You can also use them in prototyping to make interactive elements like theme switchers. By the end of this video, you'll learn how to create, edit, and apply variables to design even faster. All right, let's dive in and start mastering Figma variables. Okay, let me show you how to create, edit, and delete variables. Now, to open up the variables window, you have to make sure you have nothing selected in Figma. To do that, you can hit Escape or press anywhere on your canvas. Once you do that, in the inspector up here, you will find local variables. Click that, and we'll get the variable window. Now, you can create a new variable by clicking this button, and there are 4 variable types we can make. Color, which is used for, fills, text colors, shadows, anything that has a color in it, basically. We have number. This is used for font sizes, margin, padding, anything numerical. String is used for dynamic text, stuff like button labels or placeholders. And then a Boolean, which is used for true false states, like, for instance, toggling the visibility of an element. Now, I have a very simple demo that I've set up here. It's basically a hero section that also has this header element. And I want to go through these with you and create some variables for these elements. And these are the exact steps I would take when creating a real project, right? So I'll start with the things that are repeating themselves. The first one, the most obvious, is this primary color that's being used on the CTA buttons. We have a few different ways of creating a variable out of these. First, let's start by copying the color value, then deselecting everything, going back to local variables, creating a new variable, color. I'm going to call this primary color. And for the value, I'm just going to paste in that number. So now I can actually close this window, and I can select the element I want to apply the variable to, and I'll go down here where it says selection colors. This basically shows me the colors that are being used on my selection. So if my selection contains multiple elements, then I'm going to get the full list of colors being used. It doesn't matter what for. Fills, strokes, text colors, it doesn't matter. So instead of using like the hex code here, I want to use a variable. So I can click here and then go to libraries and then select primary color. And I can do the same for this button here. Same thing, go here, libraries, and then primary color. Alternatively, I can also click on these, on this style icon right here, and that's going to take me directly to the libraries. So I'm saving a couple of clicks there. So again, choose primary color. Now, the cool thing about variables is that if I'm gonna decide, okay, I don't like this orange color, I want to change it to something else, I can do that inside the variables window. So I can click here and I can say, let's go for like a blue color. That will actually prompt every single element that uses that variable to update. As you can see, the CTA buttons, both of them, now use the new color. How cool is that? That's, the best thing about variables. So let's actually undo that and move on to the rest of the variables. So I'm using some very dark gray for the logo text here, but also for these items, for the active home link, and also this header here, also for this theme switcher here. So let's actually copy that color and create a new variable with it. So I'll go back to local variables, create a new color variable. We'll call this text color, and we're going to paste in that value. Also, we have this kind of muted text color, right, which is a bit lighter than what we used previously. So let's turn that into a variable. And let me actually show you another way of creating a variable, and that's directly from the fill tab here. So with the elements selected, you would go to fill, you would click on the apply styles and variables button. And if I don't have a variable available for that color just yet, I can just click on the plus sign. It allows me to name the variable. Let's call it text color muted. And the value is automatically taken from the fill there. And I can just create the variable. And that created the variable, but it also applied it to that element's fill, which is super cool. So let's select the other two elements and let's apply that variable. And where else? I need to apply it here and I need to apply it here. So let's do that. Cool. And let's move on. What about this badge here? We have two colors that are being used. So let's create some variables for those. I'm going to click on the style button, click plus, and I'm going to call this badge text color, create a variable. And then I'm going to select the background for it, do the same thing, click plus. We're going to call this badge background color and create the variables. Cool. Actually, let me give you a quick tip here. When you're working with a bigger project and you want to apply variables to different elements and you're not sure if you missed anything, here's what you do. You select the entire page and then you go all the way down here in the inspector to the selection color. And this will show you all the colors of your selected elements. And from here, you can say, oh, okay, so this one we can actually assign to the text color. So you would click this and you would choose text color. This one, I'm not sure what this is for. Let's actually locate it, right? So you click that and Figma will automatically select items that are using that color. And in this case, you can see that, okay, it's the green part of the logo. I'm not really interested in having that in a variable, so we'll just skip it. So let's select the hero section again. And we can see that we are using another hex value here. I want to replace that with a variable. So I'm going to choose the one that matches, which is text color muted. And we also have these two. So FFF is the white of the background. Let's create a variable for that. I'm going to call it simply background color. And this one, F4, F4, F5, it's actually used by these very thin lines that I have going on here. So let's create a variable for that as well. I'm going to say muted background color. Of course, you can name these whatever you want. So now we have color variables created for all the elements in our page, and they're also applied to those elements. And actually, one thing that I forgot to do was apply some variables to this mode switcher, which is a component that I created in Figma with two variants, one for light mode and one for dark mode. So let's actually select this, and down here we can select the necessary variables. Let's do text color and let's do the text color muted right there. And selecting the other variant will do exactly the same thing. Now, let's see what other variables we could create for this design. Well, I'm using a lot of auto layout. This header uses auto layout. This menu item or menu list uses auto layout. This hero content, again, uses auto layout. And some of these values are repeating themselves. For instance, I have 24 pixel gap between this item and this item. And that gap is also present here in this frame. As you can see, I'm using 24 pixel gap. So that could be a variable, right? We have 48 pixels of gap inside this hero content. I might reuse that later down the line. So let's actually create two numeric variables for holding these values. So I'll go back to my local variables and I'll create a new variable of type number. And I'm going to call it spacing SM for small. And I'm going to use 24 pixels as the value. And then another one, spacing LG for large. I'm going to double that value, 48 pixels. So now let's apply those variables, right? So I'm going to select the menu frame here. And instead of using 24 pixels here, let's actually click this drop down and apply the variable of spacing SM. Now, notice Figma is very smart about this. It only shows me the variables that are applicable to that property. It doesn't show me color variables because I can't apply a color in a number field. Instead, it just shows me the number variables. So let's pick spacing SM. And we also had that going on for us here. This is another auto layout frame. So instead of 24, I'm going to choose apply variable spacing SM. Cool. Let's do the same here. Instead of 48 pixels, I'm going to apply a variable spacing large. Another number variable we could use is for the global radius. So if we look at these buttons, they're all using a 100-point corner radius. Same with this badge here, same with this button, same with the theme switcher here. So this value, because it's repeating over and over and over, we can create a variable for it. So let's create another number variable, and that's going to be global radius. I'm going to set that to 100. So then I'm going to select all the elements that use that. And here for this button, for instance, on the corner radius property, I can click on apply variable and select global radius. Same thing for this. Same thing for the button. And same thing for these two frames here. Cool. So now, just like with any other variable, if I decide, okay, I want to make everything look more boxy, I can go into my local variables and I can say the global radius needs to be 8 pixels. So now every single element that was using that border radius property, like the buttons, like this badge here, like the theme switcher, yeah, they're all using the new value of 8. Let's go back to 100 there. Something else you can use variables for is text, right? Dynamic text. So let's take a look at these two buttons. They're basically the same. They have the same content, even though one is bigger, one is smaller, but they both say start free trial. So let's create a new variable, this time string. We're going to call it CTA button text, and I'm going to say start free trial. So let's go ahead and apply that. The way you do it is very simple. You select the text layer, and then you go in the inspector all the way up here where it says text. You click on apply variable, and you select the one that we just created. And you would do the same for this button, apply variable, selected, and you're good to go. Now, if you change that text variable, let's say start now instead of start free trial, then both of the buttons will use the new value. Super cool. And finally, let's create that Boolean variable. So Booleans, as I said, can be used for true, false states. And they're great for toggling visibility on an element. Let's say I want the option to display these buttons with and without an icon. And we can easily do that by selecting, or actually first we got to create the variable. So let's create a Boolean variable this time. We'll call it CTA button icon. And by default, I'm going to set it to true. Close that window. Now select the arrow or the element that we want link to that variable. And in the inspector, under appearance, you need to hold down Shift and click on the eye icon. That's going to allow you to assign a variable to the visibility of that element. And I'm going to do the same for the icon in this button. Shift click, select CTA button icon. So now, if I toggle that variable off, then those elements, those icons that I selected are hidden. Turning it back on, they are visible once more. So that's how you can create and apply variables. But how can you edit them? Well, it's very simple. If you want to edit the, let me actually zoom in here. If you want to edit the variable name, you simply double click on it. Same goes for the value. Yeah, you double click. In the case of colors, you just click on that rectangle there. But you also have two other ways of editing variables, and that's with the edit variable icon or button here. You click that and you get a window with more properties you can edit. You can change the variable name. You can give it a description, the value. Code syntax is a way to represent variables in code when you're using dev mode. And then hide from publishing. That basically allows you to prevent that variable from being shared with other people when you publish your Figma file. And then you have this scope tab. This basically allows you to select where that variable is available, on which properties. So if you want this color, for instance, to only be available for fills, you can just select the fills. If you want it to be available everywhere on strokes, on effects like shadows, then you can toggle those on and off individually. You can also right-click on a variable. You get a few other options like copy, paste, new group with selection. I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit. Edit variable. That's going to open up the same window we saw previously. A duplicate variable. It's going to make a copy of it, obviously, and then delete a variable. Now, when it comes to organizing variables in Figma, we have three key ways of doing that. We have collections, groups, and modes. So let's start with collections. When we open our variables window, we can see up here on the left side, collection 1. And if you don't have this available, you can just click the toggle sidebar button. Now, collection 1 is the default. Everyone starts with this. At any point, you can click the three dots to rename or delete that collection or create a new collection. So let's create a new one, or we can call it collection 2 or whatever we want. And creating a variable inside this collection makes that variable only visible in that collection. If we switch back to collection 1 by using this drop down, you can see that we have the original variables here, but the new one is only available in collection 2. Now, if we delete collection 2, all the variables inside that collection are gone. They're deleted. And also, very important, you cannot move variables between collections. So those are collections. You can think of these like folders. Now, inside these collections, you can also have groups of variables. So for instance, I have a bunch of color variables here, and let's say I want to group them up. So what I can do is select all the variables that I want to place in that new group, right click and select new group with selection. I can double click that. I can name it colors. So now if we go back to all variables, we can see the uncategorized or ungrouped variables at the top, and then the ones in the colors group at the very bottom. And I can create a new group. Let's say I want the spacing variables to be in their own group. Again, select, right click, new group. Let's call this numerical or spacing or whatever you want, basically. But I forgot this global radius. Maybe I want to include that in the numerical group. Well, two ways to do that. One, you can either drag and drop into the new group, or you can actually rename this to have the name of the group at the start, so numerical, and then slash. Okay, and that's going to automatically place it in that new group. And this works for any new variable that you create. Now, deleting a group will also delete the variables inside it, but groups are much easier to work with because if we want to preserve those variables, we can actually ungroup them. So I can right click on numerical, for instance, and I can ungroup. So now all the variables that were inside that group are placed back in the general pool, so to speak. And I can ungroup colors as well. And now all of my variables are uncategorized and available for me to use. Next, we have modes, which is a super useful way of adding different states to a variable, right? You can use them for lots of different things, but one of the most common uses is for creating light or dark variations of a design. So if we look at the main table of variables, we can see the name and the value. There's also this plus icon that says new variable mode. So when we click that, we have a new mode that we can name to whatever we want. Let's go with dark. And I'm going to double click this one and I'm going to call it light. So now we have the same variables, but they have two modes each. So that means for the primary color, I can have this value in light mode and, something else in dark mode. So let me quickly update these values for the dark mode. All right, something like that. So I basically only changed the color variables because the rest are used for layout and text, and they don't really apply to a light and dark mode. Once I have these two modes, we have a different feature unlocked for our page, and that's visible right here, apply a variable mode. So when we click this, we can choose between light and dark or whatever those modes are named, right? So if I choose dark, then I get a totally different layout. The elements in my page will use the value for the mode that I just created. They're the same variables, but they use the other mode, right? And right off the bat, I can see that I have some problems here. These lines are using the muted background color, which, if we look back at my variables, has the exact same value for both modes. So I can go to the dark mode here, and I can tweak the value of that element to maybe something like that. Cool. Now, if I want to go back to light, I can just select light here. It's that easy to create light and dark modes for your Figma designs. Now, before we move on, I actually want to show you another feature, and that's auto. So far, we've been tampering with the variable mode of our entire page. But if we select our frame, our main frame, we can set the variable mode for that as well. So that's available here under Appearance. I can click Apply Variable Mode, and I have three options: Auto, Light, and Dark. Now, Light and Dark, very simple. They either use the light mode or the dark mode. But Auto actually considers the variable mode of the parent, which in our case is the page. So if this is set to auto, and if I then change my parent to dark mode, then this hero section will be dark mode. However, I can now select it and choose to keep it in light mode. And that's going to override anything that's set on the parent element. As you can see, the parent is now set to dark variable mode, and my hero section, which I just selected, is using the light mode. But if I turn this back to auto, then it automatically uses the variable mode of the parent. And as I said, you're not limited to using variable modes for creating a light or dark version of your designs. You can also use them for things like translations, for instance. If you're working with a lot of string variables, you would create a new variable mode for each language that you're translating your design to. Now, let's quickly talk about prototyping. There's a lot you can do with variables and prototyping, but I just want to show you a very simple demo, and that's changing between light and dark mode. So far, we've been doing it manually, but there's a better way we can do that with prototypes. So if we look at this mode switcher, we have the two variants. We have light mode and dark mode, and we're basically changing a couple of colors here, and we are moving this active circle between these two icons. So if we press Shift-E to switch to prototyping mode, and we preview this, you can see that clicking on the switcher works as expected. The interactions here are very simple. When we click on the moon icon, we change to the dark variant of that component. And of course, vice versa. When we click on the sun icon, we change to the light variant of that component. And we're using Smart Animate to make everything very fluid. Now, let's actually add an interaction to these elements so that we actually change the variable mode of our page. And that's really easy to do. Let's work on this first interaction there that changes to dark mode. So on click, we can add a new action, and that's set variable mode. And I'm gonna select which mode I want to switch to. And the ones listed here are the ones that you have defined here, okay? Light, dark. So again, when I click on the moon icon, I change to the dark variant of this component, but also I'm setting the variable mode to dark. And let's do the opposite. When I click on the sun icon, I'm going to add an action, set variable mode, this time to light. So let's give that a go and see how it works. So let's preview it. Let's make this a little bit bigger and then click, and there it goes. The switcher works. It visually changes between the modes inside the switcher, but it also changes the variable mode of the page. And you saw just how easy that was. Just click plus, add a new action, select the mode you want to use, and you're good to go. And that's a wrap. We've covered everything from creating, organizing variables to creating new modes for them, and also adding a little bit of prototyping magic. Now it's your turn. Go ahead and experiment with variables and let me know how that's going for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out by leaving a comment here on this video or just texting me on social media. Also, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. I'm Adi. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, take care.